Everyone, welcome to another night with Late Nights with Lenin. And I know I'm at this like weird angle because for some odd reason my camera is not being recognized by the computer, and so I had to like make do with my cell phone camera, and I don't have my cell phone stand, so we're just kind of maybe this is better. Let me see. Oh, is this better or worse? Worse. Better? I don't know. I can't tell. Is it better or worse?
You're down a little further, so you might want to do it toward the head a little bit, like angle it down. Okay. Yeah. There you go.
Okay, let's see if this. Or not. Okay, let's see if this works.
We can never get a camera right.
Okay, I'm tilted sideways now. I can tell. But I'll try to figure out what's wrong with the camera while we're reading Lenin. So, greetings, Aeolus Drift, and I labeled that music motif Lenin Truth Bombs. Oh, that's a good idea. We just call it Lenin Themes, but maybe we can ask the artist to do a follow-up called Lenin's Truth Bombs. That would be fun. Hello, Jeremiah D. Anyways, yesterday was in 1924, yesterday Lenin died, but he still lives in our hearts forever. Let's see. Oh, this is interesting. Lenin kind of did warn us about the British imperialists and all the unscrupulous nonsense that they'll be coming against. So let's start with that. So a few hours ago, RT said, wrote an article that says UK accuses of Russia of working to install a pro-Moscow leader in Ukraine. Now look carefully at the timestamp. It's at 13:25. I'm not sure which time zone it is, but just remember the timestamps, 13:25. Now, BBC later came out with their article where they claimed that Ukraine intelligence got this intelligence from the same place they got Saddam Hussein's human shredder or Gaddafi's Viagra, the Gulf of Tonkin, USS Maine. And that was an hour ago. So it looks like somebody in the Russian intelligence it knows how to listen in on everything that the US and UK people who are always up to no good are doing and release this intelligence, which is probably how they figured out the Kazakhstan coup before it happened. And now, about a year ago, I guess there was an article that said that allegedly Russia was able to decrypt like some FBI communication protocol. And now I suspect the Russia Gate nonsense was actually because Russia learned how to decrypt their stupid encryption. And it was not really about the elections at all. But then, I don't know. But then the hearings make no sense whatsoever. Okay. So, yeah. and so it's like looks like they're ratcheting up the war rhetoric. Like the U.S. sent some weapons to the fascists in Ukraine, who've been. And there's a guy named Eduard Dolinsky. He's a Jewish man who lives in Ukraine still, and his life apparently they were fundraising to hire a killer to kill him. And he said, like, he basically tweeted that if he goes missing, it's probably because they shot me. And this is all thanks to Biden and yeah, Hunter. I think Hunter Biden is still on the board of that fracking company in Ukraine, Burisma. So there's that. I don't know what else to say. Like, it's, well, Gramsci said that something. How did Gramsci phrase this? The old civilization is dying and the new one is about to give birth. Now is the time for monsters. So maybe now is the time for the monstrosities to be let out, I guess. So this week, DSA surprised us with the DSA International Caucus's announcement.
Hold on, you didn't give me an. Oh, did you give? I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. I'll get it right up.
Yeah. Hi, Jamie Brown. Welcome back, Rebecca. Oh my god. Oh my god. Okay. Why didn't you marry him? Okay. BBC is, of course, propaganda. 1984 was about BBC. The Ministry of Truth, like that was George Orwell's experience in the BBC. Nice to see you here, Jamie, every week. It's like so cool. Okay. So the DSA International Caucus says DSA-IC calls on the Biden administration to lift the Trump era instilled travel ban on North Korea and end the decades-long devastating sanctions in order to move formally towards ending the Korean War. Well, when DSA tweets about this, I'm like, oh, are they trying to infiltrate or like send CIA agents to North Korea? Like, this is so out of their norm. But then I saw the quote tweets and it was painful. Like, literally go through any of the quote tweets and it's like, you just want to, you lose hope for humanity when you go through the quote tweets. Janet, just any of them, let me see. Quote tweets on that tweet. No, go up. Yeah, hit quote tweet. Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to think. Okay. Just scroll down until we see one of those dumb ones. It's cute. Okay. Go down. I'll see. Okay. Now go down. More until you see this guy named Philip something. Okay. I'll show you when. There's also a Jeremy Gong. So one till we see. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, there's okay. So this is why you don't. No, go down somewhere. His name is Philip something, but he used to work for Kshama Sawant. Sawant. I don't know. And this is why you can't trust Trot. Philip something. He used to work for. Hold on. It'll come soon. Anyways, let's continue until you see the name Philip, or a Jeremy Gong who works for Jacobin. Let's see. And they're both like white males, so you'll see. let's see. Okay, did I see a? Okay, maybe the Stan works. Okay, actually, the Stan works. So let's see Stan's tweet. A few more. You did scroll up for Stan. I feel weird. Okay, Stan. Okay, stop. Okay, so he's like, just two things to this statement: U.S. troops out of North Korea. That is why it is called the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, because U.S. troops are not occupying that half. And then he says, a critique of a brutal military dictatorship, just so people don't confuse it as some model of socialism. It's not a military dictatorship, first of all. And if you had just studied, all you had to do is like, okay, if you hadn't like read through my thread about the DPRK, if you had just like looked up Korea from 1945 to 1948, you'd have realized that it is the only Korea that has the consent of what was formed through the consent of the Korean people. And of course, like, these are the kind of people who like denounce all existing socialism because they're too dumb to understand that the US bourgeoisie media is going to portray any action by existing socialist systems as authoritarian because they are looking at it from the point of view of the bourgeoisie. So, for example, this is how I imagine something happening. Like, this is like a mining company, and it's like, hey, Kim Il-sung, can you give us a permit that'll allow us to continue hiring child slaves? No, go away. And then the mining CEO is like, authoritarianism, and I'm gonna nationalize the mines if you guys are gonna we're nationalizing the mines. Authoritarianism. And you'll see this, like, just read carefully. There was a CNN article from about 4 years ago where they called Maduro a Grinch for confiscating toys from a toy factory and giving it to children for free, which is the opposite of a Grinch. So these are like, it's so stupid that these people think that if all existing socialism just like devolves into authoritarianism, it's like the dumbest thing ever. Like, it's much easier the Occam's razor is that the US media just portrays all existing socialists whenever they have like a probe. Remember how they would like portray Bernie? Now, how do you think, like, and he just like had mild ideas. Now, imagine somebody who's won two wars against imperialism and successfully kicked out the US. What are they going to portray him as? Like, probably some like evil monster, which is exactly what they are doing to the DPRK. Like, there's actually a really funny, I can't play this because Vice is very copyright friendly. I mean, copyright trolly, but there's a really funny part in this Vice documentary where this guy Shane first goes to visit the DMZ from the occupied side, and he's getting groped every half an hour with like border security, and then he's finally allowed to go. And then he says, ironic, and then he's like in the DPRK, and he's like under this impression, he's like, authoritarian. Well, the first thing he does is like, he's this like white guy with a camera, and he's like going to this elementary school, and people were like staring at him because that is objectively a creepy thing to do. I mean, I don't care where, he's doing really objectively creepy things, and people are kind of staring at him because he is being super creepy. But then it's like, and then he tries to visit the DMZ from the north, and he even almost got that. He's like, ironically, from the north, they don't actually have checkpoints. They just let you drive for 2 hours and nobody monitors it. And there are no rules. You can drink beer, you can smoke, or you can do whatever you want. And he almost gets it. So what you see is that they basically, and every quote, and as I've showed in my numerous Yeonmi takedowns, you can actually, if you all you need is a VPN, and you can go check the internet in North Korea and download cooking recipes or whatever. Yeonmi said cookbooks were illegal. Yeah, whatever. And the funny thing is that there's like another video of these Australians who go to the DPRK to see if they have like 8 haircuts or something. But no, the salon works just like anywhere else, and they got a haircut. And then there's, let's see. Yeah, and then there's this like a really funny one where this like person just goes, and he's a European person, and he asks them like these kids, like, what's your favorite soccer team? And then they're all like, Barcelona, AC Milan. So it's like, it's ridiculous. So yeah. Mark Jackson, how can you put yourself through reading well, because it shows you what DSA is. They are not organized. They, in fact, in their clause, if you join a Marxist-Leninist organization, you get kicked out. Savant, is it Savant or Savant? Savant, I don't know. I need to look at the Hindi way of spelling her name, but she's a trot. Anyways, maybe she is working with the DSA, but it kind of shows you the limit of trots or whatever. Boy Who Made the Haircut is the great, and okay, yeah, it's a good documentary. I recommend it. Yeah, Kshama Sawant is a trot. And yes, I have looked into the situation in Ukraine. I guess okay, so let me give you a quick rundown. A few months ago, I believe, Russia and Germany signed this deal for this Nord Stream pipeline. So Russia has a lot of natural gas that you don't need to frack. It's kind of funny because that's why Putin opposes fracking. But even though I don't care why he opposes fracking, he still opposes fracking, which is good because your water's not lighting on fire. So Russia has a lot of natural gas, and Germany needs apparently natural gas for their whatever they use. Never mind. I don't want to think about this. Anyways, so they made a deal, and I guess originally, like way back in the 2000s or something, when Ukraine didn't have like the fascist government, apparently the pipeline was supposed to go through Ukraine, and Ukraine was supposed to get some of the benefits or whatnot. But then Ukraine got total fasci, and then Russia figured out a way to bypass Ukraine and send the pipeline straight to whatever other country, like to Germany, to get the so that they could have a deal. So now Russia becomes the number 1 energy supplier to Europe. And this means that the US, the US can't bully around Europe, EU countries. Well, not bully per se, but EU had a lot of compradors. But now capitalism is kind of catching up. And they realize that Slava Komunizmu. Okay. I do not live in Russia. No, not yet. Okay. I'm gonna have to really hide comments now. Otherwise, I'm going to go on ADHD mode. Okay. So I forgot. Oh yeah. So now what's going on is like, for example, Hungary has kind of been like kicked out the fake George Soros. We talk about it. Like Hungary kicked out the fake George Soros University and invited China to put in a real university, and they're kind of realize that they kind of need to keep up at least some set of minimum standards. Because what the thing is that even if you're a U.S. puppet, if you're Viktor Orban, you are in Hungary and you have to stay there, and your head is in the line. Americans' heads are not on the line. So there is a point where even the comprador bourgeoisie are going to be a little uncomparatory. And that's kind of what's happening right now. So the idea is for the US to start a war in Ukraine and kind of create like a Libya type of situation where you have refugees flooding and destabilizing it, but then they can still have access to the European markets and whatnot. But ultimately, what this is them trying to sabotage China's Belt and Road Initiative. Because they know, like as I've read in the Green New Imperialism, they know they can't compete with China in the free market of ideas. So they kind of have to rig the system. So that's kind of what is going on. The US and the UK are continuing to arm these like far right Nazis and make up crap about Russia wanting to invade Ukraine. No one wants to invade Ukraine. There's like, it's like a bigger headache. And ironically, Germany actually got Estonia to stop sending any weapons to Ukraine, which is good. So that's basically what's going on. So they're going to be amping up a lot of propaganda. Just don't believe it. It's probably like Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction, which didn't exist, or his incubator babies. Biden's such a bloody sociopath. Okay. Yeah, just like Gaddafi, all of those lies. This is I just assume it's a lie. But I think, yeah, and that's the Kazakhstan thing was also some way into they were doing the same exact tactic as Maidan, apparently, where so in Maidan in 2014 there were these like snipers, like I believe they were like right-wing like nut jobs, who were all in a hotel called Hotel Ukraine, and then they were just aiming and going boom, 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 and just randomly killing people and causing terror. And many people thought it was the government cracking down on the protests, but it was actually like the right-wing nut jobs in Ukraine and some random other people. So it seems like there was the early stages of that in Kazakhstan, and then the guy in charge like immediately knew what was going on, and he kind of closed it up. And so yeah, so and then of course the US is also trying to do color revolutions in Myanmar, where the opposition is like literally like bombing schools and to stop kids from going to school. And they're like doing contra like tactics where they're like killing everyone who's like may work with the government. Thailand, they're doing Hong Kong style protests, and thankfully they're failing there too. So it seems like the US is trying both sides, like to attack China from both sides. I don't know. But that is the life. Yeah. Well, Azov Battalion is one of the far right militias. There are many more. I don't know which one did the Maidan though. So anyways, today Fran from Mango Press reads the part 6, and I think of the Agrarian Questions, the Critics of Marx. And this is good because this is literally the same dumb arguments that they're going to make about the Belt and Road Initiative. Literally every single thing is going to be like they're going to repeat the same dumb arguments. So listen to this, and afterwards I'll have my camera ready, and we're going to read from Nadezhda Remembers. Hey everyone, welcome to another night with Late Nights with Lenin. Unfortunately, since Fran has some dealings with the Kremlin, he can't actually show his face lest he gets poisoned by, what was the thing that dude got poisoned by?
Novichok,
yeah.
Well, Salisbury's not that far away. Can't
exactly.
be too carefully,
Yeah, we all can get Novichok. That was, but the thing is that the amount of Novichok needed to poison that dude would you'd have to have 5 suitcases. It was ridiculous. There was no way you could have gotten enough Novichok to poison that dude that way.
The best thing about that whole thing was when the BBC accused these 2 Russian dudes. And then the 2 Russian dudes went on Russian TV, started reeling off facts about Salisbury, which were hilarious. Oh, we went to see the historic cathedral, which is over 200, which features a 200-meter spire, and all. It was brilliant, just like a coat. Anyway, it was a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Who was the one who was allegedly Novichok poisoned?
Was his name something Skripal or something? I don't really know much about him. He was apparently a double agent, right?
No, I can't. I don't even care.
Apparently, he was a double agent, so who knows who did it?
Yeah, and I bet it was not Novichok.
Does that stuff even exist?
Yeah, but you can't do it in poison it by slipping. It's for poisons, you have to have a certain concentration, right?
Yeah. I thought Novichok was like a James Bond style, just they just made it up.
No, I think it is a poison. It is some sort of toxic agent, or I could be wrong.
I'm going to say it sounds like when a Westerner thinks of something Russian, think of a word that's Russian, Novichok, right? It sounds like something you just plucked out of thin air. But
that could
I don't know, I could be wrong.
Well, yeah, whatever. But anyways, it wasn't Putin personally doing it. So, did you see that tweet about the president of Poland, Dad?
Is this that he said I'm not going to bother? It's not worth doing things just on America's demand or something? Yeah,
it's not worth being hostile to China, and making up. So let me read it out. I was like, "Whoa, you guys have lost Poland."
That's big. That's the original.
That's Poland is the puppetest of the puppetest state. Let me see. Poland's president to attend. I found. He says. Let me find his. He says Poland is a sovereign nation and it decides its own policy towards China. Poland is an ally of the United States, but Poland also has a very friendly relationship with China, and says it's no longer in Poland's interest to continue criticizing China simply to please America. Mm-hmm. That's a harsh. That's right. How do you interpret it, Fran?
I interpret it as just the standard these days. I think I don't think Poland is the first country to come to this conclusion.
No.
I think they're the first to make a deal out of it. I think they're probably it's probably a domino moment in terms of, like you said a minute ago, it's Poland, right? It's the puppet of all puppets. Yeah. Once Poland, I think other countries will start to go. Lithuania tried it last week, didn't it? But the news was kind of crushed. The president was I had no consent over all this pandering to America's policy on recognizing Taiwan. The thing is, it's quite clear, isn't it, that America's using these states for its own interest. It wants Lithuania to recognize Taiwan because America knows, because they don't dare do it themselves.
Lithuania recognize the Holocaust.
Say that again.
That's to be a joke.
So I didn't catch it. It broke up.
I said, I'd rather have Lithuania recognizing the Holocaust.
Why do they not?
No.
I don't know anything about that. That's terrible.
Okay. Listen to our episode with Stanislav Tomas. They glorify these all these horrible Nazis, and the ruling family is I'm not kidding. They're a Baltic German family called Landbergis, which means landed bourgeoisie.
Well, there you go. But I think that Poland doing this I think other countries are going to start following. I think France kind of hinted at it last year with that nuclear submarine stuff in Australia.
Well, Hungary gave Hungary gave the US a big middle finger, and it was rightful. What happened is that the US will bought this like lots of land to build this university called the Central European University. And in 2011 or 2017, the Hungarian parliament, I think they call it the Diet, but I could be wrong. They had a rule that says that if you're a foreign entity and you're building a university, you have to have degrees, like you must offer the same exact program and the same exact degree in your local university, which doesn't seem anything wrong with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's a way to make sure that you're getting good quality. Well, the Soros Institute was not wanting to do that because we know it's not a real university, but probably like a regime change institute.
Yeah.
So then they
cut off that course to Americans. Why would they offer regime change in America?
Exactly. So then they kicked out that university and brought this university in China to have their campus so that they can get real accredited degrees. And that's why they're like all mad about Viktor Orban. Suddenly Viktor Orban's always been a fascist. It's just that now they're mad about it. Yeah.
One of the Mango Press team is from Romania, and he was quite vocal about this issue at the time. Like they were trying to rename when this university from China got approved. They were like America, like pressuring the government in Hungary to like rename roads like Tibet Avenue, as if like China's going to be like, oh, you didn't name a road Tibet Avenue, did you? Well, that's us told.
Tibet Avenue is like China's. Why would China mind? Tibet is China, so China would be like, oh yeah, you should name it after more of our regions.
Oh, you named a road outside the university after a Chinese province. That's cool. Thanks.
Exactly. Or autonomous region.
Avenue, Hong Kong Street. Oh, cool.
Yeah. What about Xinjiang province? Xinjiang.
Exactly. But the point is, like, why would any country, like the different? It's like a real good example, isn't it, over what the two countries are offering to the citizens of those countries. So China's offering like just a university. Like, what is it?
It's a full-blooded university that
just a university, though, right?
No. It's not just. It's a university where they can get, where people who attend there are going to get just as good of an education as the branch in China.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a university, though. It's nothing nefarious, right? What you get if you choose the American side? Well, you get some streets named after like an American geopolitical rival. Like,
and you get Regime Change University. And also Viktor Orban was like an NED. So he knows the game, and he's not going to let you coup him.
He's doing a Noriega, basically, isn't he?
Well, he's not going to, he knows the entire game, so he's not going to let you coup him.
American puppets have like a habit of doing it. They always like, Saddam did it, Noriega did it.
Yep, exactly. And now, well, I mean, it makes sense. Like, if you,
Poland's doing it. What Poland?
I don't know yet.
Well, they are, because they were a puppet, and now they're starting to turn on their puppet master, the US, right? That's what Noriega did when he started to pal up to the like Panamanian left, and it's what
it was great.
Saddam did when he became a nationalist, and started being nationalistic instead of putting the interest of US oil fields. It's the same, isn't it? Compradors, they always like hit a point where it's same with the US, like in Taiwan, right? Because the KMT are always like, no, we're China, right? That's how they're not going to do that separatist thing. The US like drop them and then move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah. And the thing is that the reason they do it is because when you're Viktor Orban, you're living in Hungary, and it is your head that is going to be on the stake. Like Americans are not living in Hungary, and nothing's happening to their head.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, like, you never know. He's still Hungarian. Like, he's not going to act like an American patriot, is he? Still, like, I know you're talking about he's got to protect his own interests, and at the same time, he's not an American. So they can never fully trust him to put the interest of the US, in front of the interests of Hungary or Panama or whatever.
For a while you could, but I guess like he kind of realized what's going on and where the bread is being buttered, and he signed an agreement with China, and he kind of like was good at sensing the situation well.
Yes, I think to sum up this entire question that you asked me at the start is, what do I make about all this? I think the answer is money talks, that old American expression. I think America's been played at its own game since 2008, at least, maybe even further since the collapse of the USSR. But it's been played at its own game, hasn't it? Because that's the way to beat if you can't beat them, join them. It's that old thing, isn't it? Money talks. The money is Poland is not going to choose the US over China when China is the one building universities and, putting jobs, into the Polish economy, whatever. So until America can offer that to its allies, the number of allies around the world that it has, or it thinks it has, are going to continue to shrink until it's left alone. And China's just going, the whole time China's gone, just stop being an idiot and you can have business dealings with us too. But they don't want to.
Well, speaking of this is a very interesting thing. Janet, this week we will have put up the president of Kazakhstan because I do have it translated. So have you been, I'll just go through like a quick of what happened. Like, have you been following it?
Kazakhstan? Yeah. Not since the CTSO forces started leaving. So I'll just listen and learn and ask.
No. Okay. So what happened is that was some sort of like Syria, like Karla revolution situation was going on in Almaty. And then the president of Kazakhstan, like for the first time in his life ever, for the first time ever since the treaty had been signed way back in the 90s, he was like, I am invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty of like CTSO, and we need help. Kazakhstan is under attack by an international terrorist organization. I mean, we know who the terrorist organization, and blah, blah, blah. So then within 2 hours, Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Tajikistan, and something else. I can't remember.
Let me have a look. I do know this.
Armenia. I do remember Armenia, Belarus, Russia, Tajikistan, I think, or Kyrgyzstan, definitely. There's one more country.
Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, and Tajikistan.
Oh, I got it right. Okay. Well, they were all there with their troops, and since they don't really have a defense industry to keep up or something, it just took them like 2 hours or something to get rid of, cool down the terrorists, get rid of them. I don't know, do whatever they needed to do. And then the next day, Kiev sets up this like press conference. So, okay, so there are different ways to refer to people. So if I call you Vladimir Vladimirovich, it's respectful. But then if I say, dear Vladimir Vladimirovich, it's like affectionately respectful. So he's like, thank you, dear Vladimir Vladimirovich. And then he thanks all the other people for their brotherhood. And then one day later, so we realized like there's like 16,000 like fake companies or something. He creates he nationalizes all these funds, and he says that this will be a people's fund for the people of Kazakhstan. We're going to use it for children's program, like all these like social programs. And at the end, he says, thanks to Nazarbayev, and thank you, Nazarbayev, who is the old Comprador president. So, and then after that, the next day, Putin says that the CTSO will be ready to defend any country who's under attack from a foreign aggressor. So it's almost like, I don't know why the US tried to coup them in Kazakhstan. My theory is that they thought Russia and China are going to get into a turf war over Kazakhstan, but they didn't do that because they're not America. So, but I don't have any other theories as to why.
Yeah. I always think that, it was, as far as I knew, there were some legitimate protests.
There was a legitimate protest over rising fuel prices. And then 3 days later was the Syria, That's close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's as if they took their chance. Do you know what I mean? That's how I see it. I don't know. I guess like why else? That's the object of these groups, isn't it?
But
the problem is that everything they do is a losing proposition, isn't it? These days.
Why?
That's the funny thing. Well, because their time on top. It just doesn't work. This isn't the way to influence the world to do what you want, is it? Like it just doesn't work.
Why did it work at one point in time?
I think maybe it worked at a different point in time because the world wasn't so connected. Like, we're watching Kazakhstan happen in real time, right?
Yeah.
So they can't just like, okay, so let's go back to 2012 and talk about Ukraine for
that was the last successful color
Ukraine
revolution?
is probably, yeah, exactly. It's probably the most successful. I mean, there is, well, you say last successful. There have been regime changes since, but it's the most successful and most brazen example to probably look at.
Yeah, Obama admitted it to like we negotiated some,
I don't think that because of the way the world is now, I mean, it was kind of similar in 2012, but we didn't have like live video and all this as accessible as we do now. I just think that it can't play out as, I think that's what gets in the way. Maduro is going on Venezuelan TV and telling the world that he's caught some American.
Now?
No, I'm saying when it happens now.
Oh yeah,
when it happens, he's going on TV.
Fisherman.
Yeah. So he's going on TV and showing their American ID and paperwork before the US has a chance to write that propaganda, to write the story on how, it failed or worked.
Or how they captured. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's the reason why a lot of it fails. I think the Arab Spring was probably the last time that they were able to get away with it because we were in that age where technology was there, but it wasn't quite as accessible as it was. I mean, we got smartphones in it.
This is a cope. This is major cope. White House reportedly tells the U.S. chip industry representatives to be prepared for new restrictions on export of chips to Russia. Like, okay.
Exactly. America's doing everything.
But aren't the chips like made in China? So who cares?
Probably. But what I mean is, the reason why they fail is you've got to think the entire world if you look at the stats for people who owned a smartphone in 2012 and what I say by smartphone is, I mean a device with a camera on it, right? That can take photos that are good enough for you to be able to like document history. Now it went from like 10% to like, I don't know, 90% of phone owners around the world, like in a year. So I think that's why, to me, the ruling class they're always boomers, right? So they're always one step behind. They're always one step behind because they don't have they've got to manufacture support, whereas the other side has popular support always. So it's almost like, pissing into the wind. That's basically what the US has been doing since 2008, is just pissing in the wind. And people like Maduro are quite happy to like turn the fan up, when the US try it. And that's why they fail. Kazakhstan can turn around and be like, look at these are the foreign groups that have. Oh no,
they were there. They were there. Like
exactly.
They had
everything.
There. They had they listened to it was almost like a sting operation. They were there until the end. They knew what was going on. Nothing was by surprise.
And it's the same in Hong Kong, right? They jumped on a legitimate
no, Hong Kong was not legitimate. This guy
murdered his original
girlfriend.
Yeah, but the original protests was about Hong Kong there's a lot of people have a strange
pregnant girlfriend. I don't know.
Because of propaganda though, people were tricked into supporting this popular movement, right? They weren't told, come out and help us dismantle the Hong Kong government. That wasn't the point of this at that point in time, right? The entire point at that moment in history was exactly Taiwan. So that was
after the man murdered his pregnant girlfriend. Okay.
And then the government quickly reacts and go, okay, well, we'll scrap that law because that will stop the rioting. But it carries on, doesn't it? Because obviously the objective has now changed, and they've lost popular support, but they've still got to continue their true objective, which is to destabilize the city. Now, the idea of that being against that law originally and getting the masses against it is different to the objects of the US, right? Which was to just cause as much destruction in Hong Kong as possible. So what I'm saying is they will wait for a legitimate quote unquote, whether it's a legitimate cause, Escher, is an argument for another day. But what I'm saying is the fact that people are coming out onto the streets, they're doing so not with the intention of, well, the NED have told us to. That's what I'm getting at, right? So it'll start with a popular movement and then it will be taken over by the NED. So in Kazakhstan, for example, and in Belarus as well, I think
Belarus, there was no legit movement. That was all NED.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is the NED, because these groups are so, they don't really have any unity. They're all just a bunch of like pen pushers waiting for the movement to strike. So when the quote unquote legitimate movement happens and the protest starts, they all just jump at the chance and jump too soon. So I think that's why it's just not an effective way to destroy a sitting government. And even America knows that, because back in the day, before we had smartphones and the internet, they weren't paying the NED to put pressure, to put a workshop on about, democracy or whatever, like they do now, because they would just arm some fascists and be like, right, go into this government building and kill everyone in there, go into this union and kill the bosses of this union. And they would do that. And then they would write the story afterwards. So even the US has had to sort of change it just doesn't work. There's no way you can progressively enact regime change and create a movement that's meant to look popular. It just doesn't work. That's why it fails, actually. That's my opinion on it.
Okay. And now we're so off topic, but we still have to understand. Well, the thing is that if you don't understand food and food sovereignty and food security and what is food and how you get your food and what is agriculture, you're really screwed. So we're going to continue with our reading. And the way we do our reading is Fran reads, and if there's something important, I interrupt and inject. But of course, since Fran's just as familiar with Lenin as I am, we can trade off, or you can read and I interrupt.
Yeah, well, I'm not actually familiar with this specific
perfect.
text, so I don't mind reading it. Yeah.
Then you read. Okay, got it. Okay. Agrarian question. So we're an inquiry into the peasant farming in Baden. Are you sure? Yeah.
We did small farm last week.
Okay, perfect. Go for it.
So just start reading, yeah?
Yeah.
Due to lack of space, writes Hertz, we cannot render the detailed and interesting judgments of the inquiry into 37 communities in Baden. In the majority of cases, there were analogous to those presented above. Side by side with favourable, we find unfavourable and indifferent judgments. But nowhere in these entire 3 volumes of inquiry do the detailed budgets of expenditure give any grounds for the conclusion that underconsumption, sordid and degrading poverty, etc., are prevalent. The words we have emphasised represent, as usual, a direct untruth.
I like this idea, a direct untruth, as opposed to, I like it. Okay. Okay. So go on.
What's a direct untruth?
No, we'll figure this out. I'll figure this out. Okay. We read on and then we'll tell you what it is.
The very Baden inquiry to which Hertz refers contains documentary evidence attesting to underconsumption precisely among the small peasantry. Hertz's distortion of the facts closely resembles the method that was especially cultivated by the Russian Narodniks and is now practiced by all the critics on the agrarian question, viz. Sweeping statements about the peasantry. Since the term peasantry is still more vague in the West than it is in Russia, and that's still vague today, right?
Oh my God. Yeah. Like you can totally make peasant be anything from rural person to like actual slave. And like half of the misinformation about the Soviet Union always has to do with how, like, what somebody imagines to be a peasant. And you're like, no, it could be like just like a slave owner and not you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. He says it here, look, in the West, this socialist state is not sharply defined. And since average facts and conclusions conceal the relative prosperity, or at all events, the absence of starvation amongst the minority and the privation. Privation.
It's like suffering.
Suffered by the majority. Sorry, it's confusing when you see people use words that are not used much anymore. Anyway, privation suffered by the majority. Apologists of all sorts have an unlimited field of activity. In actual fact, the Baden inquiry enables us to distinguish various groups of peasants, which hurts, although an advocate of details preferred not to see. Out of 30...
He calls him advocate of details because he's actually... that's right.
I get what you're saying. I'm going to try and sum it up in a minute. But anyway.
No, don't sum it up. Just read it. Okay, don't worry.
Out of 37 typical communities, a selection was made of typical farms of big peasants, gross batter, middle peasants and small peasants, as well as day labourers, making a total of 70 peasants, 31 big, 21 middle and 18 small, and 17 day labourers and households. And the budget of these households was subjected to a detailed examination. We have not been able to analyse all the data, but the principal results cited below will suffice to enable us to draw very definite conclusions. What I was going to say, Escher, this details, quote unquote, that he preferred not to see, well, that's the direct untruth, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Shall I carry on?
Yeah, okay, carry on.
Let us first present the data on general economic type of A, large, B, middle, and C, small peasant farms. Well, the English is a brief review of the results of the assessment of incomes in communities investigated. Mm-hmm. We have divided this table into the groups for the gross Bauer.
Bauer means farmer, so big farmer, middle farmer, and little farmer.
Yeah, that's the A, B, and C. Kleinbauer, respectively. Size of holdings, average in each group: A, 33.34 hectares. That's the big farmer. B, the middle farmer, has 13.5 hectares. And C, the small peasant farms have 6.96 hectares, which is relatively high for a country of small land holdings like Baden. But if we exclude the 10 farms in communities numbers 20, 22, and 30, where the exceptionally large holdings are the rule, up to 43 hectares amongst the Kleinbauer, which is the small peasant farmer.
So, because he's doing it in relative terms, because, that makes sense.
And up to 170 hectares amongst the Grossbauer, the big farmer, we shall obtain the following figures. More normal for Baden: A, 17.8 hectares, B, 10 hectares, and C, 4.25 hectares. Size of families, so A is 6.4 persons in the big family, 5.8 in the middle, and 5.9 in the small. Unless otherwise stated, these and the subsequent figures apply to all the 70 farms. Consequently, the families of the big peasants are considerably larger. Nevertheless, they employ hired labour to far greater extent than the others. Of the 70 peasants, 54, i.e. more than 3/4 of the total employed hired labour, namely 29 big peasants out of the 31, 15 middle out of 21, and 10 small out of 18. Thus, of the big peasants, 93% cannot manage without hired labour, while the figure for the small peasant is 55%. These figures are very useful as a test of the current opinion, what's accepted uncritically by the critics.
It feels like exactly, Billy. This is exactly what I mean. Like these critics, like that dude who miscoded Vijay Prashad and thought British brought education to India. uncritically, yeah, like
just the New York Times, right? Just think the
anything
New York Times.
or BBC, like literally. Okay, go ahead.
What's that? There's like a meme picture, isn't there, of the US? That meme where he's got the camera and it's on the chest and the focus is on that middle bit. It's basically that. That's the way. I'll send it in. You can get it on screen.
Okay.
Right, where we at?
We are
accepted
opinion.
Accepted uncritically by the critics.
Oh my God! Let me give you another example. New York Times. They did until about last week. They referred to the president of Kazakhstan as president. Suddenly, all of them had this switch, from the mainframe from the Queen Borg turned on, and suddenly in every single American newspaper they were pro-Russian authoritarian. And I don't know how that just where is that Borg collective's switch that turns on that makes them all just
sat in an office in New York.
Is that where the Queen Borg is? Because really
they send an email around, then it's done, isn't it?
All of them, all these journalists, suddenly have that switch in unison.
The email drops into their inbox. Do not refer to him as president. You must refer to him as authoritarian pro-Russian puppet, or you will not be published in the New York Times ever again. And all the liberals go, yes, sir.
Okay.
And they edit all the way. And that's what happens.
Okay.
Before I carry on, I do love how every Lenin text, whether it's a review on food security of certain farms or whether it's what is to be done, is full of shade. All these little brackets that he adds in, where it's just Lenin shade.
I love it.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly.
I see them as quote tweets.
Same.
Okay.
That employment of hired labour is negligible in present day peasant farming. Among the big peasants whose farms of 18 hectares are included in the category of 15 to 20 hectares, in wholesale descriptions reckoned as real peasant farms, we see pure capitalist farming. 24 farms employ 71 labourers, almost 3 labourers per farm, and 27 farms employ day labourers for a total of 4,347 days, or 161 man days per farmer. Compare this with the size of the holdings of the big peasants and the environs of Munich, whose progress served our bold Mr. Bulgakov as a refutation of the Marxist prejudice regarding the degradation of the peasants by capitalism.
Oh, yeah. By the way, Bulgakov's, this is Lenin mocking all of Bulgakov's PhD thesis, which is brutal.
Was he mocking the ultra left, the ultra Twitter left?
No. This is not ultra left. This is the centrist, where Bulgakov is saying, okay, everyone knows that you have the contradiction of capitalism, where instead of having 10,000 small farms, they're all going to consolidate and be owned by Monsanto, and all the people are going to become poorer and poorer. Mm-hmm. Bulgakov was saying that it was a Marxist prejudice and it's not going to happen. Not everything's going to be owned by Monsanto one day. I mean,
right.
Right now, this proves Lenin is right because everything is owned by Monsanto.
Yeah. Exactly. Or Nestle or whoever, one of the other three.
I think Monsanto owns a lot, though, is it Archer Danielle Midland? One of the, or all three combined, 3 companies own most of the farmland in the world. It doesn't even matter. But anyways, yeah. And so regarding the degradation of peasants by capital, and it's true. I don't know what more to say.
Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine calling yourself, what was this guy? What was he, a centrist?
No, he called himself, Bulgakov called himself a Marxist, but for his PhD thesis, he wrote that there's no peasant, peasants can have their own little farms and live in their little houses happily ever after and whatnot. So
he's an anarchist. He's not a Marxist.
He was not an anarchist. He was, I think he later becomes a cadet.
It sounds quite libertarian. Assuming that a monopoly is not going to fall.
Everyone called themselves Marxist because it was fashionable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. For middle peasants, we have the following figures. 8 employ 12 labourers and 14 employ day labourers for a total of 956 man days. For the small peasants, 2 employ 2 labourers and 9 employ day labourers for a total of 543 man days. 1/2 the number of small peasants employ hired labour for 2 months. 543 into 9 equals 60 days, i.e. in the most important season for the farmers, notwithstanding the fact that the farms are larger, the production of these small peasants is very much lower than that of the Frederiksdal peasants, whom Messrs. Chernov, David and Hertz are so enamoured. The results of this farming are as follows. Again, I'm just laughing at the fact that this is meant to be like a serious review and critique into how liberals are doing their analysis on this subject, and Lenin keeps throwing in his like shade.
Oh my God, yeah. He is the best shade thrower like ever. I like how he's like advocate of details. My favorite Lenin shade is the one he's like, what does this mean? Only Allah can figure it out. Like it's an imperial materialism. Like what does Bogdan and in Russian it's even funnier. He's like, что это значит? Только Allah ведает. And you're like, yeah. But it's funny why he invokes Allah. I don't know. Well, but he sometimes says Bag znayet, which means God knows, but this extra shade, it was like invoking Allah. That was great.
Right. Yeah. The results of this farming are as follows. 31 big peasants made a net profit of 2,329 marks and suffered a loss of 2,113 marks, i.e., the total profit for this category of 9,000 marks.
Okay, wait. Actually, let's just put up a chart, skip reading this so that people understand. So go to the consequently part.
Wait. Consequently, the small peasant, literally speaking, can barely make ends meet and only just manages to do so by cutting down consumption,
i.e. starving himself.
The inquiry contains figures showing the consumption of most important food items on each farm. Below, we quote these data as averages for each category of peasants.
Okay, so I will promise to put this. Jenna, like hound me right after for the graphs. We'll put this up, and what you notice is that the small peasant is eating less bread, less potatoes, getting way less meat, getting less milk, and is having less heat and less clothes. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Of course, across the board, right?
Across the board. Day laborers hardly get nothing. They don't get. They have like potatoes and hardly any milk, and just a little bit of meat. Yeah, they get a lot more potatoes though.
These are the data in which our bold Hertz failed to perceive. Right. This is the great. What did he refer to it as above? The
advocate of details.
Hidden truth.
No.
No, direct
untruth.
Yeah, this is the direct untruth, and this is what the New York Times do, and what the media does every time. Right?
Literally,
they fail to what he's talking about is only looking at a certain piece of data which backs up everything that.
Oh yeah, that's like
what
all
he wanted to say.
It can. Oh my God! Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Like with the COVID data.
Exactly. Well, just American propaganda in general, right? There's always like a little bit of truth behind something, and they'll just twist it. That's what he's talking about. Anyway, let's carry on.
Exactly.
Failed to proceed either under consumption or poverty. We see that the small peasant, as compared with those of higher groups, reduces his consumption very, very considerably, and that his food and clothing are a little better than those of the day labourer. For example, he consumes about 2/3 of the amount of meat consumed by the middle peasant and about half of the amount consumed by the big peasant. These figures prove once again the uselessness of sweeping conclusions and the erogenous of all assessments of income that ignore differences in living standards. If, for instance, we take only the last 2 columns of our table.
We'll do that. And Janet will hound me. Okay.
To avoid complicated calculations in translating food products into money terms, we shall see that the net profit, not only of the small peasant, but also of the middle peasant, is a pure fiction, which only pure bourgeois like Hecton Klawacki or pure Voroshilovs like our critics can take seriously. Indeed, if we assume that the small peasant spends as much money on food as the middle peasant does, his expenditure would be increased by 100 marks, and we would get an enormous deficit. If the middle peasant spends as much as the big peasant, his expenditure would be increased by 220 marks, and unless he stinted himself in food, would too sustain a deficit. Does not the reduced consumption of the small peasant, following self-evidently from the inferior feeding of his cattle and the inadequate restoration, often the complete exhaustion of productivity of the soil, entirely confirm the truth of Marx's words, which the modern critics merely shrug their shoulders in lofty contempt? An infinite fragmentation of means of production, an isolation of the producers themselves, monstrous waste of human energy, progressive deterioration of conditions of production and increased prices of means of production, an inevitable law of proprietorship of parcels. That's from Das Kapital.
Chapter 3.
I think what's interesting here, which if people want to sort of relate this to something today, is when liberals will use the dollar per day scale.
Oh my God. And then they'll change the definition of poverty when you get more and more poor people. Like they'll be like, there are 2 billion people who make less than $1.90 a day. But it used to be that there were 2 billion people who made less than $2 a day. So they just changed the definition of poverty to not include some people who still don't have, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, even at a basic level, it just doesn't work, does it? Because a dollar is different in America to what it gets you in another country.
But even then, common sense should tell you that $2 a day is starving, because there is no country in which you can get enough food for $2 a day. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the dollar is in America versus, it's just not possible. And but yeah, the World Bank literally changes the definition every few years to cover for the fact that capitalism is putting more and more people under poverty.
And that's exactly what he's talking about here, right? This is exactly what these critics are doing. Mm-hmm. They are the IMF of this period of history, where they're tweaking data
Bank,
to make it look like, World Bank, whatever, to make it look like, capitalism is producing. Look at these glorious production figures. Look at the dollar a day poverty line. It's just that it's the same. Anyway, I'll carry on reading.
Yeah, they literally changed it. So then you have like 1.5 billion people who make less than $1.90, and then the next one will be, they keep this is exactly what the liberal critics were doing, is that they were like kind of just changing. Yeah, they were changing the definition of poverty from like not having enough food to like, I don't know, whatever crap that was.
Or if it's not so, they'll tweak the data to make that like one extra slice of potato that a peasant's got sound like it's some sort of like 300% increase, because they've tweaked the data in like that's what they'll do.
Ronald Reagan reclassified ketchup as a vegetable because it has tomatoes in it, and they're like,
exactly.
Yeah.
Now Americans are eating 3,000% more vegetables a day, but they're not telling you it's because ketchup's now a vegetable.
Exactly.
The unseen untruth, or whatever it is, the hidden untruth. Direct
untruth. I love that.
In regard to the Baden inquiry, we must note still another distortion by Mr. Bulganov. The critics mutually while one distorts one aspect of the information adduced from a given source, the second distorts the other.
The critics mutually supplement each other. So one critic distorts information from this guy. It's kind of like how like Rachel Maddow distorts information she gets from CNN, and then CNN distorts information they get from MSNBC. So they're just like supplementing each other forever.
It gets worse than that, doesn't it? Because the BBC and Britain,
the BBC joins the circle. a circular citation.
They paid Adrian Zenz to write a report on Xinjiang, and then he'll write the report, and then the BBC will cite the report that they paid Adrian Zenz to produce in their latest article, and then Adrian Zenz will cite that article in his next one to back himself up. So he's created like a circle of citation and source. Exactly, this supplementing of each other. One distorts one aspect, and then the other distorts the other. And it keeps going round and round and round. I think the BBC and Adrian Zenz have done this loop with each other about 3 or 4 times now. They're on to like the 4th loop. He'll cite the BBC citing him, citing the BBC.
And then the New York Times then cites Adrian Zenz. Like, I remember like New York Times cited their own article, which then eventually all of these articles always lead to Adrian Zenz. And I'm like, if you can find me one non-Adrian Zenz source, I'd be happy to read it. But all roads lead to Adrian Zenz.
Exactly.
And I don't like the fact that I know who Adrian Zenz is.
But then Adrian Zenz can be like, all roads lead to the BBC. And the BBC can be like, all roads lead to Adrian Zenz, because it's just a loop. They're literally like a citation loop that goes round and round and round, and with the exchange of cash or whatever somewhere in there. Anyway, Mr. Bulganov frequently quotes from the Baden Inquiry. It would appear, therefore, that he is acquainted with it. Yet we find him writing the following: the exceptional and apparently fatal indebtedness of the peasant. So states the overture 271, represents one of the most immutable dogmas in mythology created in literature in relation to peasant farming. Surveys at our disposal reveal considerable indebtedness only amongst the smallest, not yet firmly established holdings.
I'll have
You'll have your
friend read it. Okay.
Thus, Sprenger expresses the general impression obtained from the results of the extensive investigation conducted in Baden, to which reference is made in a footnote in the following manner: only the plots of day labourers and small peasant farmers are, relatively speaking, heavily mortgaged in a large number of the districts investigated. But even amongst these, in the majority of cases, the indebtedness is not so great as to cause alarm. The strange thing, on the one hand, there is a reference to the inquiry itself, and on the other, there is merely quoted. There is the merely quoted, quote unquote, general impression of a certain Sprenger, who has written about this inquiry.
This is exactly what we were talking about. So the inquiry quotes himself, who quotes the inquiry.
Yeah, exactly. Source and source, ASPI will source them. They do it as well. Another group that do this, ASPI. But as ill luck would have it, Sprenger's writing falls short of the truth, at least in the passage quoted by Mr. Bulkanov. We have not read Sprenger's book. First, the authors of the inquiry assert that in the majority of cases, it's precisely the indebtedness of the small peasant holdings which reaches alarming dimensions. Secondly, they assert that the position of the small peasants in this respect is not only worse than that of the middle and big peasants, which Sprenger noted, but also worse than that of the day labourers.
Jesus.
It must be observed in general that the authors of the Baden Inquiry established the extremely important fact that on the large farms, the limits of permissible indebtedness, i.e. the limits to which the farmer may go without risking bankruptcy, are higher than on the small farms.
Oh, by the way, pause. In 2005, I believe, Joe Biden helped write in a law that also did that, where it made it super hard for normal people to get bankrupt, declare bankruptcy, and just start over. Well, yeah, exact same thing still going on. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, 2008 is a very good example of this, right? Isn't it?
Too big to fail. But then all these people became homeless because they lost their mortgages. This is exactly it.
Mm-hmm. Too big to fail. That's the correct quote, isn't it? They literally brazenly say it. These places are too big to fail, but they let it fail and just sponge it off everybody else. Anyway, After the data we have presented above on the farming results obtained by big, middle and small peasants respectively, that this fact requires no further explanation. The authors of the inquiry estimate that indebtedness permissible and safe for the large and medium farms at 40 to 70% of the land value, or an average of 55%. In regard to the small farms, which they set as between 7 hectares for crop cultivation and between 2 and 4 hectares for viticulture and commercial crops, they consider that the limits of indebtedness must not exceed 30% of the value of the holding.
So whatever the land is worth, it can for small farmers, they can only get loans for about 30% of that. So if the land is worth $1,000, they can only have $300 worth of indebtedness.
Yeah. Whereas the other side can have $700 up to $700. 30% of the value of the holding if the regular payment of interest and the installments on the principal is fully secured.
Okay, so hold on. Let me explain what fully secured means. So this means that, you say that if I can't pay my debt, you get to foreclose and own my farm. That's a fully secured because there is an actual farm that the bank will take over.
Yeah, something physical.
Not secure lending is basically because I don't know why they'll do it. Well, it's basically because you're rich and the bank has faith that you'll eventually figure out a way to, I don't know. But that's when the bank, even if you fail to make the payment, the bank can't take over your farm.
Right. Okay. Maybe it's registered in someone else's name or something. I don't know.
Oh, no. It's often banks give unsecured loans to people who are credit worthy, which means.
Right. Okay. Right. Yeah. This is the idea, isn't it? That it's too big to fail, right?
Yeah.
You're too big to fail, so we'll give you a loan of whatever you want, right? Whereas the small peasant gets, the middle peasant only gets 30%, right? Let's look at the small one. In the surveyed communities, with the exception of those where get your friend to read
right
that.
Of inheritance by which the property of the peasant household passes undivided into a single heir. Okay, go ahead. Prevails.
The percentage prevails, e.g., Unit
Don't worry about it.
And Newkirch, the percentage of indebtedness in proportion to the value of the estate steadily diminishes as we pass from small to the large farms. In the community of Dittoir, for instance, the indebtedness of farms up to 1/4 of a hectare equals 180.65%. From 1 to 2 hectares, 73%. From 2 to 5 hectares, 45%. From 5 to 10 hectares, 25%, and from 10 to 20 hectares, 3%. But the percentage of indebtedness does not tell us everything. And the authors of the inquiry draw the following conclusion. The above given statistics consequently confirm the widespread opinion that those owners of peasant holdings who are on the borderline, in the middle, between the day labourers and the middle peasants in the rural districts, the farmers of this category are usually called the middle estate, are frequently in worse position than those in the groups above or below in the size of their holdings, for although they're able to cope with the moderate indebtedness, if it is kept at a certain and not very high level, they find it difficult to meet their obligations. Being unable to obtain regular collateral employment as day laborers, etc.
I.e., day laborers can work for instead of working 10 hours, they can decide to work 14 hours. So these people can't even do that.
By which means to increase their income. Day laborers, insofar as they have some regular collateral employment, are frequently in a much better position materially than those belonging to the middle estate. For, as computations in numerous cases have shown, collateral employment produces at times such a high net, i.e. money, net income, as to enable them to repay even large debts. Finally, the authors reiterate that the indebtedness of the small peasant farms in relation to the permissible level is sometimes unsafe. Hence, in purchasing land, a particular business-like caution must be exercised, primarily by the small peasant population, and by the day laborers closely related to it.
And I bet you these small peasant population and the closely related day laborers can't even read. So how on earth are they supposed to exercise this business-like caution when they can't even read?
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the idea, the neoliberal idea, isn't it? That like, you've just got to be a smart businessman, right?
Yeah, but back then, these people, I'll bet you anything that this small peasant population and day laborers were not literate at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so like they couldn't read. So how do you even know what is on the contract with the bank? I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. How do you even have not even that, but how do you have a fair view of the entire economic position that you're in, right? You can, exactly. It's not even so much that you need to read to understand it, but you need to know your place in the chain of production to be able to assess your position properly, right? If you've got these neoliberal bourgeois
hold on 1 second. Back in the day, because literacy was so important, like they had these laws all over the world where it's like, hey, if you go write down on a piece of paper and get it notarized that you own this land, and like you go register it with the city, and then no one objects within a year or something, the land becomes yours. So rich people would often just like go and register people's lands, and these people wouldn't even be able to read to know that this guy had just stolen their land.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we don't even have to talk about, but this is not. I guess we don't even have to talk about the neoliberal perspective, because this is still like this is exactly. Still in much worse conditions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what I'm saying is, even if they were to read, right, even people today are still. People can read today. They're still kept in the dark, right, by the bad analysis that neoliberalist economists will produce and put in front of people. How many proletarian class people in the Western world today make arguments for capitalists that make them sound like in their own head that they're like in the position Jeff Bezos is, and they're not. Do you know what I mean? People have forgotten.
No. I see this. It's like that's what Gramsci talks about with the hegemony. They've been completely Engels uses this word, emborgesified in their thinking, but they do serve that important purpose in the third world. And yeah, they just don't. The thing is that everything, like today on Twitter, I was trolling some Polish person because it was fun. He was like, "This is communist." Like there was like some picture of like all these like it seemed like they got a lot of food in communist Poland. So I said,
"That's been doing the rounds."
Yeah, and so I co-tweeted and I showed them. I think that sounds like it's a vast improvement from fascist Poland. Which is, and then this guy was like, brought this like victims of communism thing. And even according to their like fantasy, 50,000 people were killed. Fascist Poland, 22% of the population or 6 million people were killed. So it's like, and I was like, better than fascist Poland. So often they just can't, contextualize information. So they see that America or Britain, like, you look better than, I say, Congo, but you can't contextualize why or how and what to compare it with and whatnot. So you need to be comparing like Vietnam with Congo, and you'll see that communism works really well. But if you compare America, you need to subtract all the looting from the British. You guys have to subtract all that looting you got illegitimately, and then you'll realize, oh, if we hadn't looted this, we'd be in a really bad shape. So like those kind of contextualizations they cannot make. So a lot of these people are thinking, I like status quo and I want it to stay forever. But unfortunately...
And that's the dialectic, right? That's the key point with dialectical analysis over, this emotional analysis that these neoliberalist and, these old
contextualizing it,
would do. This emotional analysis over dialectical analysis. That's the difference. Oh, look, people died in under Poland, under the Soviet Union, but they're not telling you the full story, right?
Well, I mean, 50,000 allegedly. If allegedly 50,000 people were killed, it's a vast improvement than 22% of the population, 6 million.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you can't it's the dollar a day comparison, isn't it? You can't compare Vietnam to the US without, not just on like the dollar scale alone. You have to compare the material conditions of both places, and
you have
like
to
you say, how they got
out all the looting that was done by France and then the US and then the napalm.
Exactly, right. So I carry on reading.
Yeah, of course. And so often these people are okay. So they make these arguments for capitalism because they like their life in status quo, and they don't realize that eventually contractions happen and proletarization, and the status quo cannot maintain itself.
Yeah, it's the allegory of the cave, isn't it? Anyway, this is the bourgeois counselor to the small peasant. On the one hand, he fosters in the proletarians and semi-proletarians the hope that they will be able to purchase land. If not in the first, then in the second generation.
Oh my God. Yeah, you'll be your grandchildren. If you work hard, one day your grandchildren will have the affordable access to purchasing affordable land.
Yeah, they'll eat not just potato and water. They might get to eat like
carrots,
2 potatoes and water.
And maybe carrots.
And by diligence and abstemiousness.
I don't know what that means. Hold on. That's a new word. So I need to learn what that means.
Marked by restraint, especially in the consumption of food or alcohol. Okay, so it's the act of self-starvation, right? Okay. It's exactly. So if I work hard and starve myself and work myself to the bone, right?
Possibly my grandchildren may have the affordable opportunity for
they might become the Amazon CEO.
No, not even that. Not even that. They will be able to purchase land, not Amazon CEO, but one day
obtain from its enormous percentage of net income. On the other hand, he advises especially the poor peasants to exercise particular caution in purchasing land. Of course, if they have no regular employment, that is to say, when the capitalists have no need for settled workers, and yet there are critical simpletons who accept these selfish lies and threadbare banalities as findings of the most up-to-date science.
Oh my God. Yes, exactly. I want to scream this out. Yet there are critical simpletons who accept these selfish lies and threadbare banalities as findings of the most up-to-date science.
That's arguing in favor
Krugman.
Well, that's just proletarian. That's what we were just talking about before, right? That's
no. But he's talking about the critical simpletons, as in the Paul Krugmans, the entire economics department of Harvard, MIT, the Sloan, all the University of Chicago.
Okay, the useful idiots that do the economic analysis, right?
Yeah, that's who he's talking about. The critics, not like the proletariat.
Journalists.
Yeah, he's talking about how they're like deceiving the proletariat. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he says it here, doesn't it? Look, the poor peasants to exercise particular caution in purchasing land if they have no regular employment. This is that idea that like, it's not a very smart investment to try and bet yourself.
Yeah. Or like,
you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
The high payments. Are you sure? You're not a big capitalist. You sure don't want to let Shell come in and buy it, you know?
Did you guys, a few weeks ago, like this guy, I think, was trying to hit on me, and he said something about, what was the keyword he used? What was it?
The guy was trying to hit on you with IMF style neoliberal economics.
No. What was the word where you teach poor people? What is it? What's that word? Financial literacy.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. This idea that the poor are just too stupid. That's why they're poor.
Yeah. And so I remember I tweeted this out. Like, I can't get over the fact that there are people who are over the age of 5 who seem to think that poor people lack financial literacy and not money. And I was just laughing because I forgot.
We can't have a social security state in the West because poor people will just spend it all on cigarettes and alcohol, right? Instead of feeding themselves because they're too stupid to realize that they need to buy food as well. It's that idea, right?
Yeah. It drives me. Yeah, it's pretty basic. The definition of poverty. I don't know why did I think? Oh, who knows why I was thinking about this? Okay, excellent. But yes, because it's something related to what we're reading.
Exactly. That idea.
It's because they're telling them to exercise particular caution and like.
Yeah. You can't have nice things because you're poor, right? How dare you like have a cigarette or something to try and relax at the end of your 15-hour shift or whatever? Because you should be. You should be investing in stocks, right? No, you should not be investing in stocks. You should be like micro lending, whatever. No, they do. They want the proletariat to invest in small time stocks, don't they? I mean, the Nancy Pelosi was recommending Americans invest their welfare checks in stocks instead of buying food with it, right?
This idea. Seriously?
Yeah.
Is there a Jenna? Can you find this clip if she said this? Oh my God.
It was either her or someone connected to her.
When they give out. It reminds me of like 401ks, like when you're at work. You have like a factory worker making $8-9 an hour, and they push you into getting 401ks through work. So you're putting away money for your retirement and stuff. So you're putting it into the stocks. So that's
exactly. So your pension ends up being at the whims of the capitalist anyway, because they've tricked it out of you.
Continue with reading.
Where are we? Okay, we're at the next part, aren't we? One would think that the detailed data we've presented on the big, middle, and small peasants would suffice to make even Mr. V. Chernov understand the meaning of the term petty bourgeois as applied to the peasant, a term that seems to inspire him with such horror. Capitalist evolution has not only introduced similarity in the general economic system of Western European countries, but it has brought Russia closer to the West. So the main features of the peasant farming in Germany are similar to those in Russia. However, in Russia, the process of differentiation among the peasantry, abundantly confirmed in Russian Marxist literature, is in its initial stage.
Okay, by the way, differentiation of the peasantry is exactly where you have like Monsanto, it differentiates between like one or two super rich rural people owning everything, and then everyone becoming poorer and poorer. And in Russia, like there were more in the rural population, there were like more income diversity, but that will go away one day. But in Germany, it had already gone away faster because then what happens is that these people who just lost their land will go to the city and work as factory workers, and they need you to work as factory. They need to get rid of the peasants to work as factory workers. So that's kind of why it'll always happen, regardless of what they say or don't say.
Right. Okay. Which wasn't happening in Russia at this point, right?
In Russia, it was still like early stages. It eventually, okay.
Whereabouts are we? Okay, it is in an initial stage. It has not yet assumed anything like a finished form. It has not yet given rise, for example, to the immediately noticeable, distinctive type of big peasant in Russia. The mass, big peasant be what became known as a kulak, right?
No. Kulak is more like a banker. No, a big peasant is like a landowner. Literally, the Russian word is also grossbauer or no, something like that. No, a big peasant is like that one super rich. In there's a perfect Hindi word like zamindar, but
there's not a Western word for it. Well, again, goes back to the start, doesn't it? Where he says there's no real Western definitions of peasant.
Yeah, okay, but in Hindi you'd call them zamindar.
Translate that into English?
I can't.
What's the English
Zamin
definition?
Means land. Zamindar means the holder of land.
Okay, so a landlord in like the medieval sense.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody who collects taxes for the
British.
Yeah, right. Okay, in Russia, the mass expropriation and extinction of an enormous section of the peasantry still greatly overshadowed the first steps of our peasant bourgeois. In the West, however, this process, which started even before the abolition of serfdom long ago, caused the obliteration of the social estate distinction between peasant and privately owned as we call it, farming, on the one hand, as the formation of a class of agricultural wage workers, which has already acquired fairly definitive features. On the other, it would be a grave error to assume, however, that this process came to a stop after more or less definitive new types of rural population had emerged. On the contrary, it goes on continuously, now rapidly, now slowly, of course, depending on the numerous and varying circumstances, and assumes most diverse forms according to the varying agronomic conditions, etc. The proletarialization.
As in turning the rural population into wage workers.
So I'll read that sentence again. The proletarialization of the peasantry continues, as we shall prove below by the mass of German statistics, besides which it is evident from the cited data on the small peasantry. The increasing flight.
This is good mango lassi. Thanks. Okay.
Jealous.
Okay.
The data are whereabouts that the peasant's flight to town is necessarily preceded by his ruin, and the ruin is preceded by a desperate struggle for economic independence. The data on the extent of the employment of hired labor, the amount of net income, and the level of consumption of the various types of peasantry bring out of this struggle in striking relief. The principal weapon of this fight is iron diligence and frugality.
Financial literacy.
Frugality.
Financial literacy.
Frugality, according to the motto, we work not so much for our mouths as for our pockets. The inevitable result of the struggle is the rise of a minority of wealthy, prosperous farmers, an insignificant minority in most cases, and in every case where particularly favourable conditions are absent, such as proximity to the capital, the construction of a railway, or the opening up of some new remunerative branch of commercial agriculture, etc., and the continuously increasing impoverishment of the majority, which steadily saps the strength of the peasants by chronic starvation and exhausting toil, and causes the quality of the land and cattle to deteriorate. The inevitable result of this struggle is the rise of a minority of capitalist farms based on wage labour, and the increasing necessity for the majority to work at sidelines, i.e. their conversion into industrial and agricultural wage workers. The data on wage labour very clearly reveal the imminent tendency, inevitable under the present system of society, for all small producers to become small capitalists.
Yep, exactly. And then and then it turns them, they'll eventually have to be in Stalin's collected work, he talks about this shoemaker who goes to work in the shoe factory, but he still wants to be a old style shoemaker, but that'll never happen. It's kind of like that. And now you have a new kind of peasantry with Uber. Actually, if you look at Uber, it's kind of like
I mean, these things need analysing. There's a real tendency in the West, isn't there, amongst the left to do no more analysis than it's like read Stalin and Lenin and that's it.
No. They don't even do that in America. I just wish they would read something properly.
Okay, I'm talking about even ones who have read it. They don't apply it. They don't. There's no Marxist text. Well, I mean, there's articles on Uber's.
No, but if you look
struggles, but there's no analysis of this.
No, I know. But if you look at what Uber does, it's exactly what the kulaks do. I can do this analysis next week on late nights and with Lenin. We'll have a special episode, but it's literally exactly identical to, like, all the gig economy crap, like Uber, DoorDash, the delivery. They are literally I don't know what to say. Harking back to Tsarist Russia.
Well, it's the capitalist adapting to reproletarianize a class of underclass, right?
It just like works in a different form, but it's all the same. And I will have to do them. I'm going to get the charts, the data, and I'll need about a week to get all the data, but it is literally the same thing.
Okay, I'll read this last paragraph. We quite understand why bourgeois economists on the one hand and the opportunists of various shades on the other shun this aspect of the matter and why they cannot help doing so. The differentiation of the peasantry reveals to us the profoundest contradictions of capitalism in the very process of their inception and their further development. A complete evaluation of these contradictions inevitably leads to the recognition of the small peasantry's blind alley and hopeless position, hopeless outside of the revolutionary struggle of the proletariat against the entire capitalist system, close bracket. It is not surprising that these most profound and most underdeveloped contradictions are not mentioned. There is an attempt to evade the fact of the overwork and the underconsumption of the small peasants, which can be denied only by unconscionable or ignorant people. The question of the hired labour, employment of the peasant bourgeois and their wage work of the rural poor is left in the shade. Thus, Mr. Bulganov submitted an essay on the theory of agrarian development, passing over both of these questions in eloquent silence.
I like this, in eloquent silence. I mean, they do that too, all the time. I mean, like with the trade deals, the World Bank, they're just like, oh yeah, we're going to get this like cash infusion, blah, blah, blah. And in eloquent silence, they'll be like, oh, by the way, we get to privatize your water, even your rain. And it's always this way. So unless it's like big, flashing, bright light bulb that cannot be like denied in front of your eyes, these little things that will get bigger, these trends are totally going to be ignored. I mean, like, apparently, like all these economists totally missed the 2008 crash. Like, oh, it's getting, and they were like, it's a black swan event. How could we? But I mean, it's just that you didn't care. If you look at the 2004 or 5 foreclosures, you realize this trend, but no one cared. Like, no one.
I mean, are they really saying that bankers, economists who are friends with Wall Street bankers and talk to them every day about what's going on Wall Street, and it's their job to analyze Wall Street, don't understand what was going on Wall Street leading up to the crash?
Totally missed this like crash out. No, they just were like keeping it quiet and eloquent silence until like, oh, it just blew up. And that's what they're going to do. Like, you realize that there's lots of eloquent silences. I don't even know where to begin. Okay.
Well, just watch the film, The Big Short, right? The film, one of them is trying to tell people it's coming, right? And everybody's ignoring him, and he's trying to work out, he's following the paper trail. I mean, I know that film's a bit fictional, as if like
but it's a good movie. I liked it. It was kind of, they kind of,
it is a good movie. I understand
in a dark
it, right?
comedy too.
Yeah. Anyway, right. Let's carry on. Peasant farming, he says, may be defined as that form of farming in which the labour of peasants' own families exclusively or almost exclusively employed. Basically, well, to a Westerner that doesn't really understand what a peasant is, in the modern day terms, it's your like mom and pop's business where, you know, mom and dad and the kids
not
work
mom and dad, your children are working and not going to school.
Exactly. At this point in history, but I'm talking about today, it would be a mom and pop shop where the family has to work there because it doesn't make that much money. But like the kids work there.
Like those restaurants where you have this like 12-year-olds like being wait staff. And it's like a mom and pop restaurant, and you're like, this feels a little
and it might be that like the kid is not getting paid because the restaurant can't compete with the McDonald's that's the big capitalist that's 2 blocks down the way, right? So the kid has to, the small peasant bourgeois family have to employ child labor. I mean, it literally is child labor.
I've seen many restaurants where you have that like 12-year-old kid on Friday nights, like working as a waitress. And in America,
I'm just helping my mom out. It's just seen as that,
right? Come on. Okay.
Imagine if your dad like owned a mine in Congo and I'm just helping my parents out, like, you know. mining down there.
If your dad owned an entire mine in Congo, you don't have to work a single day.
Of course.
Like Elon Musk, Emerald Mine was one his and it was in Zambia, right?
But imagine if Elon Musk had to go work down. This is the battle between the peasant bourgeois and the big capitalist that we're discussing, right? Elon Musk doesn't have to go work down his dad's gold mine. He can just pay some other parents to send their kids down there because of necessity, right?
Yeah,
because that's the only way they. So it's just that relationship. Anyway, very rarely do even peasant farms dispense altogether with outside labour, the help of neighbours or casual hired labour. But this does not change naturally the economic features of peasant farming. Hertz is somewhat more naive, and at the very beginning of his book, he makes the following reservation. Hereinafter, by small or peasant farms, I shall always assume a form of farming in which the farmer, all the members of his family, and not more than one or two workers are employed. When they discuss the hiring of a hand, our Kleinberger soon forget the very peculiarities of agriculture, which they constantly make so much of with no regard for relevance. In agriculture,
Go ahead.
One or two labourers is by no means a small number, even if they work only in the summer.
Well, especially in the summer, since that's the growing season. You can't really work. Okay, go ahead.
But the main thing, I mean, the difference is, isn't it, that the amount of work that a small farm can hire out. What he's describing is that just because it's one person, the big capitalists are going, look, these people are smaller. I'm going to make them sound smaller just because they're hiring one or two labourers. But he's not giving you the full picture that on a peasant farm, one or two labourers is the difference between getting your crop done in a month to getting it done in 6 months, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it does mean quite a lot materially once you apply it to the part of the data that these IMF types of the day are trying to hide. But the main thing is not whether this is a small or large number. The main thing is that hired labourers are employed by the wealthier, more prosperous peasants whose progress and prosperity our knights of Philistinism are so fond of presenting as the prosperity of the mass of the population. In order to put better complexion on this distortion, these knights majestically declare the peasant is a working man no less than the proletarian. And the author expresses satisfaction at the fact that workers' parties are more and more losing the anti-present tinge characteristic of them hitherto.
He's making fun of the characteristic of them hitherto. Hitherto, you see, they left out of the account the fact that peasant property is not an exploitation instrument of exploitation, but a condition for the application of labor. That is
what I was thinking. What I was thinking when I was reading that back is that this is the idea that we've seen this come true, haven't we? Whereas quote unquote workers' party, such as like the UK Labour Party, that at this period of history was liberal, but on the left side of liberal,
Lenin wrote
and
that
now is completely.
We read that piece. Remember?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we did. But now Labour is completely
Keir Starmer,
Blairite. A party of the capitalist, in no different to the Tories in Britain.
Oh yeah.
So this idea, it did come true.
Oh yeah. But then I agree. But the fact that they're saying that, okay, so Workers' Party were anti-peasant in not the same sense. They were like anti-landowner because the landowners were not workers. And I hate the way they're like in the West, there's like all these like things that you don't have the terminology for. So you can just like write what English propaganda by just calling them peasants, and suddenly you lose, you don't know if it's like one person, like if it's like a slave owner, or if it's like in a plantation, or if it's something different, like, yeah. But anyways.
Are you talking about a medieval slave, a German slave farmer?
We're talking about Tsarist Russia.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't even matter.
The term peasant in the West is so distorted that...
No, we don't know what they mean. I mean, there's like... So there are all these words that like, and so it makes it so easy to do the propaganda. And so anyways, continue.
That is how history is written. Frankly, we cannot refrain from saying, distort, gentlemen, but we have a sense of measure. And the same Mr. Volkanov has written a 2-volume study of 800 pages, chock full of quotations. How correct they are, we have repeatedly shown. From all sorts of inquiries, descriptions, monographs, etc., but not once, literally not once, has he attempted to even examine the relations between the peasants whose property is an instrument of exploitation and those peasants whose property is simply a condition for application of labour. Not once has he presented systematic statistics, which as we have shown, were contained in the sources that he cited, concerning the types of farms, the standard of living of the peasants who hire labour, of the peasants who neither hire labour nor hire themselves out as labourers, and the peasants who hire themselves out as labourers. More than that, we have seen that to prove the progress of peasant farming, or peasant farming in general, he has given data on the Grossbauer and the opinions that confirm the progress of some and the impoverishment and proletarianization of others. He even sees a general social regeneration, social regeneration in the rise of the well-to-do peasant farms, as if well-to-do peasant farms were not synonymous with the bourgeois entrepreneur peasant farm. His one attempt to extricate himself from this tangle of contradictions is the following still more entangled argument that the peasantry, of course, does not constitute a homogeneous mass. This has been shown above, probably in this argument about such a petty detail as the industrial wage labour performed by farmers. A constant struggle here in process between differentiating trend and levelling trend. But these differences and even the antagonism of individual interests greater than those between the various strata of the working class, between urban and rural workers, between skilled and unskilled labour, between trade unionist and non-trade unionist. It is only by completely ignoring these differences within the worker estate, which cause certain investigators to see the existence of a fifth estate in addition to the fourth, that a distinction can be drawn between the allegedly homogeneous working class and the heterogeneous peasantry. What a remarkable, profound analysis.
Especially because the homogeneous working class develops after the heterogeneous peasantry all go bankrupt and lose their land. Like, you know what I mean? Then they leave and go to the cities and work in a factory. So it's like so of course you're not going to be like working in those like Manchester factories that Engels talked about where all the gross stuff that was going on until you lose all your land and you have nothing but your wages, labor to sell. Go on.
Where are we at?
What a profound...
What a remarkably profound analysis, confounding trade differences with class differences, confounding differences in the way of life with the different positions of the various classes in the system of social production. What better illustration is needed of the complete absence of scientific principles in the fashionable criticism and its practical tendency to obliterate the very concept of class and eliminate the very idea of class struggle. Agricultural labour earns 50 kopecks a day.
That's like 50 pence or something.
Okay, 50 cents, for example. The enterprising peasant who employs day labourers earns $1 a day. The factory worker in the capital earns $2 a day. The small provincial master earns $1.50 a day. Any more or less politically conscious worker would be able to say without difficulty to which class the representatives of these various strata belong, and in what direction of the social activities of these various strata will tend. But for the representative of university science, or for the modern critic, this is such a profound wisdom that is totally beyond assimilation.
Yeah. I mean, I've noticed that most social science in the West is like utter nonsense. I just remember a few months ago, this like political scientist made a crap about how democratic a country was, and Adam Johnson showed that if we used her her criteria, America before slavery ended, it was more democratic than America after slavery. And you're like, that doesn't feel right. And yeah, a lot of it is just like getting people to not understand imperialism, or just like look at a small microscope of like something.
Well, after years and years of propaganda, you can reduce a people to like just mere concepts. You don't even have to like fudge the data to get these points across. I mean, ask an American what freedoms Americans have that people around the rest of the world don't have, and they'll look at you like, what do you mean?
Freedom?
Oh, exactly. What is freedom? I mean, I know what freedom is to a capitalist, but what is freedom to the average American?
I don't know.
You know, exactly. It's just a mere concept. They don't actually
have a well-defined concept. It's
being able to do what you want. I mean, even if they say, well, it's being able to do what I want, right? But then who's to say that any other citizen around the world can't do what they want? I've never felt that like any government's gone, you're not going skateboarding today. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's this? What is this concept of freedom?
They don't have.
No, you're not allowed to eat tomatoes today. It's Tuesday, and it's no tomato Tuesday.
I want to say one thing. I know a lot of Americans, and I've seen this on Twitter a lot, think that they're the only ones that have freedom of speech. And
okay, no,
exactly.
And no, you don't. Okay, first of all, you don't have as much freedom of speech as you think you do, and I don't think you need to be able to say Heil Hitler. I'm sorry, you can.
But what's the scale? Like, what's the scale of freedom of speech? That
I don't. Well,
where on the scale do you sit? Like, please, like, if you're going to produce this data, like, where do you sit?
So it depends on how much of a threat you are. Like, for example,
Americans, but the New York Times could easily print Americans have 46% more freedom of speech than somebody living in authoritarian Kenya, right? And it would go out, and then you would end up with some university, Harvard, academics citing that. It's 43% more freedom of speech. Like, it's just, what does it mean?
Absolutely nothing. So, and no one has freedom, just so you know, no one has freedom of speech. Every government has some restriction on the freedom of a speech, but you won't feel it unless you are posing a threat to the existential system. So no one has freedom. That's the honest answer. But yeah, like freedom of speech is like the dumbest one. Is you can criticize the government because the government doesn't really take your opinion into account. Like you're like that lunatic. You're like that lunatic on the street who's talking about the end times or whatever. Like, that's why they can totally ignore you. I mean, all governments you can.
Americans are 43% more allowed to talk about the end times than somebody living in authoritarian France. They're not.
Oh my God. Okay. There was two things that just hit me last week. So I know I've said this last week in last week's episode, but it's still in my head so much. In authoritarian Kazakhstan, there was a fire in an apartment building and it killed 2 people. So the American-backed puppet president fired everyone who worked for the city that made that happen and like renationalized those apartments. In New York, the mayor's team owns these apartments that killed at least 9 people and nothing happened. So I mean, I seem that just like there is very little consequences in America for. I mean, how many police? The second one example was in Kazakhstan. The police tortured some dude and he died. And then guess what? They tried and convicted these police officers who got sentenced to prison, which has never happened. Which has maybe happened once or twice. I can remember 3 times maybe.
Well,
right?
You know that the US wouldn't have put Derek Chauvin in jail had the entire world not been like, yeah.
He was the sacrificial lamb.
Exactly. That's all he is. How many, if he's gone to jail, yeah, but how many policemen that have murdered somebody have got away with it, right?
Thousands. And
Exactly.
like they've gotten rehired at other departments. Like it's just like, yeah.
But this is a good example of this, what Lenin is talking about in this article, right? It's this idea that journalists will go, but look, we've put that policeman in jail. Racism's over now. The policeman's in jail, but they're not going to tell you about the thousands who have not gone to jail.
There's no one is actually even collecting data on that.
But what that is, as opposed to what Lenin and the Bolshevik Party preaching in their, analysis of what he's talking about here, is that like that is an emotional response from a capitalist, because they want you to be like, oh, cool, you put him in jail, right? Okay, it seems like justice. The capitalist state has applied justice to that situation. Yeah, it's bad, but justice was served, right? But the difference is that
there are thousands.
That's not a dialect. Well, that's an undialectical approach, isn't it? The dialectical analysis of that goes, well, hold on, what about the ones that didn't go to jail, right? Let's put them in.
Thousands of them, not the 1,000.
Like, so now the statistic has completely, but the statistic has completely changed now, right?
Yeah, I can literally name the 3 who have. I remember, this lady who shot this guy who was sleeping in his apartment in Oklahoma. I can't remember her name. Jason Van Dyke, because he just point blank killed a kid on video, and then they tried to delete the video, but that video they tried to delete went on video. And so there was this video of him smoke coming out of this kid's chest. And then third one is Derek Chauvin.
Mm-hmm. Literally, and again, this just goes back.
This is over at least 1,000 people if go to jail get killed by officer involved shootings, at least 1,000. But no one's actually keeping track of the officer involved shootings, because these are officer involved shootings with witnesses or been on camera or something like that. So there's probably a lot more officer involved shootings. Oh, my favorite. Do you remember that? Or the bullet that.
Well, who's not keeping track of them all? I mean, people are, but the working class have limited resources in their ability to be able to react to this, right? We can keep track of it and we can go, this is how many, but whenever they don't have political power, there's no way for them to actually, it's just data. It's just a set of numbers, right?
But because we still need that data to even start to see the problem. Of course,
but that's the difference in capitalist democracy or bourgeois democracy that we're living in compared to, say, proletarian, where that would be different, because you would be like, right, why, the dialectical approach to quote unquote police violence or any subject answers the actual problem, right? And the difference with the capitalist class is that they don't want to take the dialectical approach because
they don't want to solve your problems. So they don't
exactly.
They don't even have the data to solve your problems.
But if like in this article that Lenin is talking about, if these comprador economists spoke the truth of the actual matter of truth of the economic situation on the ground at that time, i.e. they've done dialectical analysis of the situation, they would find that their data isn't representing the people who have paid to be able to source them. That's why it's skewed. And that's the entire...
Their data is not skewed. It's their analysis of the data where they lump it, like how they lump it. All Lenin did was separate it into 3 groups instead of just like one lump sum average.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, he drew the curtain back, right? And went, what about this? What about this?
Exactly. I mean, I've seen this with, oh my God, everything in I don't know how everything.
If you refuse to do the what about this, then that's when your analysis becomes undialectical, right? That's
but everything in America is a lie. So when you see the unemployment statistics, they change the definition of what is unemployed and then you're like, Joe Biden created some jobs. Oh, the lifting children out of poverty bullshit. Like that one made me mad.
Yeah, exactly.
because that was total nonsense. That was
some
just
economists gone because of my analysis, right? If you look at this scale instead of this one, then
no, it was worse than that. It was like some tax credit meant that some families had $300. So for 6 months, because of this $300, like they could afford to feed their children. They didn't lift any children out of poverty. They for 6 months made it so that some children could afford food.
Yeah. And then the economist wrote a paper saying, no, look, neoliberal capitalism has fed these children for 6 months. Therefore, it is
No. They haven't even. No. I'll show you the paper. It's basically just literally what I said. The Economist didn't actually do much, but then the Joe Biden White House was spinning this complete nonsense, and most people in America who are like basically didn't question it, even though it's like so obvious. They just don't have the skills to even question it because.
Lack of education. I mean,
no, it's not a lack of. I mean, okay. I'm sorry, but peasants in Tsarist Russia did have those skills, and they were illiterate. So I'm not. I mean, you're literate, so I don't have an excuse for you. But yeah, it was so infuriating. Like everything, if you look, there is no follow through, and everything's kind of done half-assedly. And yeah, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, well, I guess that you have to analyze what this whole text is about. Is being able to notice when the New York Times are being the New York Times, right? And to not just read what they say and be like, okay, I'm going to take that as fact. You need to pull the curtain back.
Oh yeah, like I do. When you're like,
that's dialectical materialist analysis of a situation, right? It's nothing big or scary. It's just you've got to research. What Lenin's saying is that we must look at problems properly and solve them properly.
You can't solve it if you don't even understand it. So you have to first look at it properly.
There's this idea that poor people, to solve poverty, they have to have some neoliberal government.
No, there's only one thing that solves poverty.
Them. Exactly. Give them more money.
Revolution.
More money
more money,
people's
but
pockets.
Yeah, but the only one that gives more money is a Bolshevik revolution.
Well, yeah, they take political power and able to do that. But what I'm saying is that's the difference between a neoliberal response to poverty is
having more NGOs with your friends in the board that you can then whatever these NGOs do.
Whereas the dialectical approach is to just solve it. Oh, people are poor. Well, let's make sure they have more money then. How do they have more money? Well, we enact some political decisions which enables them to, spend less on clothes, spend less on feeding themselves.
But that's really not going to happen unless there's a dictatorship of the proletariat.
Oh, but that's the difference that's why a dictatorship of the proletariat carries out their political decision making dialectically. That's what I'm getting at, Aisha. The difference between a capitalist cannot carry out economic analysis in that way. They have to create a direct untruth, right?
Exactly.
Because the difference is that they end up saying, well, in fact, capitalism is not sustainable.
Yeah, I mean,
they're not fudge the data to be able to say that actually it's actually producing results. Only for like the 1% at the
in
top.
Congo, we're just going to call that an externality, and we're not going to take it into account. And this is the profit.
Well, we're not even going to mention it. Just don't know about it.
It's called externalities.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how many Westerners know that Nestle are just like? How many Westerners, when they bite into a Mars bar or whatever, think of the child slave that grew that cocoa? They just don't even realize, right?
And how many of them know that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that the child slaves can't sue Nestle in America?
Exactly.
And then they cited the IG for
But the dialectical approach would be like, right, okay, our chocolate is made by child slaves. Let's stop that. and that would be the case.
Yeah. And the easiest way is all you do is you don't have to do much other than like Really,
Pay them
like
properly.
just like stop having a comprador, like just let that country not have a US backed puppet government, like just back up, and naturally within 5 days you're gonna have like
all that money that they're putting into like an offshore Bank of England account would be given to
no, just like just the US military presence pulls back and boom. It's not like you don't need to do anything to the third world countries. You just have to let them be.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, yeah, and then there's like the child slaves mine. Oh, the worst. Oh my god, they call it artisanal mining, but that is code for non-unionized child slaves.
Where's that?
Oh, okay. So basically, like there's this report, they called it artisanal small-scale mining for.
Are they talking about? Is this American kids or
no?
African?
Obviously African. So they called it artisanal small-scale mining, and that's not artisanal. It sounds like you're like a potter or something. But what the artisanal means is non-unionized. Small scale means non-unionized child slaves, basically.
It's insane.
Yeah, but they gave it such a nice spin: artisanal small scale mining.
For the modern liberal, right?
Yeah, yeah. If you call it artisanal small scale mining, it doesn't become child slaves.
Yeah. Artisanal small scale cocoa. So they can be like, oh, my chocolate's artisanal small scale chocolate.
Yeah, exactly. No, I just remember that. And I was like, this means child slaves. And it's like, wow, you just have to change the term. And then these liberals just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what time is it over there, Fran?
It is 6 minutes past midnight.
Thank you so much for staying this late for Lenin. When's the next mango press thingy?
Okay, so the next episode will be on Friday, this coming up, hopefully if all goes to plan. We are at the minute trying to change our schedule up a little bit because just to find a slot that's easier. Yeah, basically Tom's over in China now. So it's hard for him because the day that we were streaming is the day that he works like 10 hours a day or whatever.
Wait, why does he work in China?
Why does he work there? Because he's got to work there to live there, right?
I thought he went to university.
Yeah, he's already a graduate. He's a teacher there.
Okay, got it. Now
so he's a teacher. So he's over there now anyway. And our schedule is being revamped, but it's not been revamped yet because we're slow. So I imagine the show will be this Friday. So keep your eye out for that. But you can follow us on Twitter anyway. Just search Mango Press and you'll find us. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. And we'll talk about the continuation of the propaganda with Bernays. So anyways, have a good rest of the evening.
Thanks. You too.
Or good night.
You too. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. I'm back live without Janet because she went to bed because she had a headache because she woke up at 5 a.m. And so I might not be as together with the camera. Also, I'm blurry and low volume. Am I still blurry? No, I'm not blurry. Is my volume better? Let's make sure my volume is better. Okay. Am I blurry still? I can't tell. Okay. So please donate via Super Chat because we really need the money and it'll help me get motivated. I'm more blurry or the volume needs to be higher? Is this a better volume? I can't tell. Okay, tell me when the volume's right and I'm not blurry. I guess I could be blurry, but tell me when the volume's correct. Down. down a little, as in I need to turn the volume down a little? Okay. Is this better? Okay. Is this better now? Is this good enough for a reading of Nadezhda Remembers? And please, please, please donate via super chat. It looks like I haven't gotten any today. So let's see. Oh yeah. Exactly. Like this LA person's like, I already spoke about the situation between NATO and Russia. So just wait till the end of the show and then just rewind back to the first few minutes. Well, one thing I just find everything so I find everything to be so hopeless and depressing because it's like, oh, everyone in the Imperial Corps is kind of not like together, and there is no. Oh, I don't know what to say. Well, I hate it when I have to get into arguments with so-called like just basics. Leftist. Okay, so I can't remember where we left off. Let me figure this out. Did we read Geneva? Yeah, we read this. Let me see where we left off. I don't remember. Jesus Christ. Okay. We did talk about the shipper. Okay. We talked about the conference. Okay. After the second Congress is, I believe, where am I still blurry? I can't tell. After the second Congress is where I leave off. So I'll continue reading and let me know. And like I said, how long I read is really dependent on super chats, and I'm sleepy. So if you want a long reading, so this is 1903 to 1904. So this is after the first Congress of the party. Okay. Trying days set in for us when we got back to Geneva after the Congress. First of all, Russian emigrants came pouring in from other Russian emigrant colonies abroad. League members came asking what happened at the Congress, what was the trouble about, over what was the split. Plekhanov was fed up with these questions, and one day he related, X arrived, kept asking me and repeating me, I am like Burid. Oh, we finished the Buridan's ass. Like that's like some like thought problem. So where did we leave off? I'll just read it and pretend that we didn't leave off here. People began to arrive from Russia too. Among them was Yerma from St. Petersburg, whose name Vladimir Ilyich had addressed his letter to St. Petersburg organization the year before. He promptly sided with the Mensheviks and called on us. He put on an air of deep tragedy when he came in and turned to Vladimir Ilyich, exclaiming, I am Yerma. Then he began to talk about the Mensheviks being right. I remember another man, a member of the Kiev committee, who was anxious to know what changes in technique had led to the split at the Congress. I just stared at him, baffled by such a primitive understanding of the correlation between bases and superstructure. I never thought it could exist. Okay, she needs to come to modern America. More primitive. People who had been assisting the cause with money or offering their apartment for secret rendezvous and so forth withdrew this help under the influence of Menshevik agitation. I remember an old acquaintance of mine coming with her mother to Geneva, where she had a sister. When we were children, we played together at thrilling games of travelers and savages living up in the trees. That I was overjoyed to hear she had come. She was a not so young girl and quite a stranger. The subject of the assistance that their family has always rendered to the Social Democrats was mentioned. "We cannot give you apartment now for secret rendezvous," she said. "We highly disapprove of the split between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. These personal squabbles are very bad for the cause." By the way, the split was not a personal split. The Mensheviks essentially did not want to do a revolution. They thought that the workers should just like focus on strikes and try to get better wages, while the party aligned itself with the liberals to overthrow the czar, because they thought that you needed capitalism to have gone on for its cycle for like another 50 years before you could theoretically have a revolution. So Lenin's like, no, you can't make the peasants and the rural population who are starving slaves like suffer for like another 100 years until you decide, oh, now is the right time for the revolution. So that's like the main difference between so it's not so the Mensheviks were essentially against a revolution. So it was not a personal squabble. Ilyich and I had some strong things to say about these sympathizers who belonged to no organizations and imagined that their accommodations and paltry donations could influence the course of events in our proletarian party. Vladimir Ilyich wrote at once to Claire and Kurtz in Russia, telling them what happened. Beyond establishing their astonishment, they were unable to give any helpful advice and seriously suggested recalling Martov to Russia and hiding him away in some remote corner to write popular pamphlets. It was decided to bring Kurtz over from Russia. After the Congress, Vladimir Ilyich did not object when Glebov suggesting co-opting the old editorial board. Better to rough it the old way than to have a split. But the Mensheviks refused. In Geneva, Ilyich tried to make it up with Martov, wrote to Potrasov assuring him they had nothing to quarrel about. He wrote to Kalmikova, auntie, about the split and told her how matters stood. He could not believe there was no way out. Obstructing the decisions of the Congress, staking the work in Russia, and the efficacy of the newly formed party struck him as sheer madness, something unbelievable. At times, he clearly saw that a rupture was unavoidable. He started a letter to Claire at once saying that he could not imagine the present situation. And one had to realize that old relationships had radically changed and that the old friendship with Martov was at an end. Old friendships were to be forgotten and the fight was starting. Ilyich did not finish the letter or post it. It was very hard for him to have a break with Martov. Their work together in St. Petersburg and on the old Iskra had drawn them close together. Extremely sensitive, Martov in those days had been very quick at grasping Ilyич's thoughts and developing them in a talented manner. Afterwards, Vladimir Ilyich had fiercely fought the Mensheviks when Martov's line showed the tendency to write itself. His old attitude towards him revived. This was such the case, for example, in Paris in 1910, when Vladimir Ilyich and Martov worked together on the editorial board of Social Democrat. Coming home from the office, Vladimir Ilyich used to tell me in pleased tone that Martov was taking a correct line and even coming out against Dan. Afterwards, in Russia, Vladimir was very pleased with Martov's stand during the July days, not because it was any good to the Bolsheviks, but because Martov bore himself as behooves a revolutionary. And Vladimir Ilyich was already seriously ill when he said to me once sadly, "They say Martov is dying too." Most of the Congress delegates, Bolsheviks, went back to Russia to work. Some of the Menshevik remained, though, and some even joined by Dan. Their supporters grew abroad in number, but not in Russia, because they didn't really want a revolution. Okay. The Bolsheviks who remained in Geneva met periodically. Plekhanov took a very firm stand at these meetings. He cracked jokes and cheered people up. At last, Central Committee member Kurtz, alias Vasilyev Legnik, arrived. The squabbles which he found raging in Geneva had a very depressing effect upon him. He was kept pretty busy settling disputes and sending people to Russia and so forth. The Mensheviks made a hit with people abroad and decided to challenge the Bolsheviks by calling a League of Russian Social Democrats abroad, at which the League's delegate to the Second Congress, Lenin, was to report back. Yeah, go for it. Enjoy your drinks or whatever you guys need. Okay. The Bolsheviks who wait. Just before the Congress, Vladimir Ilyich, letting his thoughts wander, ran into a tram car while out cycling and nearly knocked his eye out. He came to the Congress pale and bandaged. Mensheviks attacked him with bitter hatred. I remember one shocking scene when Dan, Krokmal, and others with furious faces leapt to their feet and banged the top of their desks. The Mensheviks were numerically stronger than the Bolsheviks at the League Congress, as in from people who didn't live in Russia. They adopted the League rules, which turned the League into a Menshevik stronghold, gave them publishing facilities, and made the League independent of the Central Committee. Kurtz, Vasiliev, on behalf of the CC, demanded that the rules be modified, and the Leagues resisted this. He declared it dissolved. Uproar raised by the Mensheviks was too much for Plekhanov's nerves. He declared, I can't shoot at my own side. At the meeting of the Bolsheviks, Plekhanov said we ought to compromise. There are moments when even the autocracy is obliged, oh my God, to make concessions. That's when we say it vacillates, Lisa Kunyats threw in. Plekhanov glared at her. In order to preserve the peace in the party, Plekhanov decided to co-opt the old Iskra board. Vladimir Ilyich resigned from the board, saying that he would no longer collaborate and did not even insist on his resignation being reported. Plekhanov could try to make peace if he wanted. He, Lenin, would not stand in the way of peace within the party. Not long before, he had written to Kalmyko about quitting the job is a dead end. In resigning from the editorial board, that was what he was letting himself for, he realized. The opposition further demanded that representatives should be co-opted on the CC and 2 seats should be given to them on the council, and that the decisions of the League Congress should be recognized as valid. The Central Committee agreed to co-opt 2 members of the opposition, give them 1 seat on the council, and gradually reorganize leagues. But peace there was none. Plekhanov's concessions had encouraged the opposition. This is why you don't compromise with the reactionaries. You don't give them an inch. Like, remember when Obama, like, if you give them an inch, they'll start taking. So you just have to just go, whoosh. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. Don't compromise. Had encouraged the opposite. Plekhanov insisted on a second representative of the CCRU, alias Horse, whose real name was Galperin, standing down from the council in favor of a Menshevik. Vladimir Ilyich hesitated long before agreeing to the new concession. I remember 3 of us, Vladimir, Rue, and I, standing on the shore of Geneva Lake, which was in a turbulent mood that evening. Rue urged Vladimir Ilyich to agree to his resignation. At last, Vladimir Ilyich gave in and went to Plekhanov to tell him that Rue would stand down. Martov put out a pamphlet, State of Siege, full of the wildest accusations. Trotsky also wrote a pamphlet entitled Report of the Siberian Delegation, in which events were depicted quite in the Martov strain. Plekhanov being represented as the pawn in the hands of Lenin, and so forth. Vladimir Ilyich sat down to write his reply to Martov in his pamphlet, 1 Step Forward, 2 Steps Back, in which he gave a detailed analysis of what took place at the Congress. What does this mean? I don't know. Okay, I hope she goes. I forgot where I was. At the Congress. Meanwhile, a struggle was going on in Russia too. The Bolshevik delegates reported back on the Congress. The program and most of the revolutions at the Congress were hailed with great satisfaction by the local organization. All the more puzzling to them was the position of the Mensheviks. Yeah. Well, okay. We need a little bit. I feel how do I do this? Yeah. No, I'm trying to figure out how to. What am I doing? Give me 1 second. Let me figure this out. Okay. What am I doing now? Menu. Yeah. No. That's not what I'm doing. I don't know. It's like, okay. Well, we need a quick advertisement break.
Need more anarchists dunked on, Nazis ripped apart, and the libs' real intentions to be trotted out? Hit the like and subscribe buttons below, and then go over to historically.substack.com and check out our newsletter and podcasts.
Okay. Yeah. I don't run this ad often enough, but it's like it really works. You have to remind people to like and hit subscribe all the time. Yeah. Okay. I don't know why. Don't worry about it. Okay. Just send just share this with your friends and have a party and have like more people watch it. Eventually it'll work out, I guess. Am I why are there I don't know what's going on. Okay, so let's see. Okay, I'll read a little bit more. One of the most energetic we're demanding submission to the Congress decision. One of the most energetic of our delegates at the time was Uncle Lydia Knipovich, who, was being an old revolutionary, could simply not understand how Congress decisions could be flouted in such a way. She and other comrades wrote encouraging letters from Russia. Local committees sided with the Bolsheviks one after another. So the Mensheviks did not have support, had only support of like people who did not live in Russia. Okay, yes, thank you, Nomo Papo. That is a very good idea. Okay, Claire arrived. He had no idea what a barrier had arisen between the Bolsheviks and Mensheviks and thought it was possible to recognize them. He went to see Plekhanov only to convince himself that a reconciliation was absolutely impossible. He went back in a depressed mood. Vladimir Ilyich was gloomier than ever. In early 1904, Celia Zelikson Baron Essen, a representative of the St. Petersburg organization in the worker Makar, arrived in Geneva. All were the Bolshevik supporters. Vladimir Ilyich saw them often. They talked about the work in Russia and the quarrel with the Mensheviks. Baron, who was quite a young man at the time, was enthusiastic about our work in St. Petersburg. Our organization is being run on collective lines now, he said. We have separate bodies working, a propagandist group, an agitators group, and an organizers group. Vladimir Ilyich heard him out and then asked, how many people have you in the propagandist group? Baron was a bit put out and answered, I'm the only one so far. Not many. Oh my God. Gracias, Mr. Difficile. Muchas gracias. Thank you. Not many. Not many, observed Ilyich. And how many have you in the agitators group? Baron reddened to the roots of his hair, which was bright red apparently, and said, I'm the only one so far. Ilyich held his side with laughter. Baron laughed too. Ilyich always had the knack, by means of one or two probing questions, of putting his finger on the weakest spot and sifting the real facts from the husk of fine schemes and spectacular reports. Afterwards, Olimsky, MS Alexander, who joined the Bolsheviks, and the Beast, who had escaped from remote exile, arrived. After her escape from remote exile, Beast was full of cheerful energy, which communicated itself to her all around. Not a shadow of doubt or indecision weighed in on her mind. She made fun of everyone who had the blues and moped over the split. All these immigrant squabbles did not seem to affect her. At that time, we had started holding weekly at-homes at Secheron to bring the Bolsheviks closer together. We never got down to any real talk at these gatherings, but at least they helped dispel the gloom cast upon all these squabbles with the Mensheviks. Excellent fun to hear B strike up a rollicking song about Vanka. A bald-headed Yegor, a worker, joined in on the chorus. Yegor had a heart-to-heart with Plekhanov and even put on a starch collar for the occasion. But he had come away disappointed and saddened. Cheer up, Yegor. We'll win the day. Come on, let's go with Vanka, the beast said. Ilyich would cheer up too. This boisterous gaiety dispelled gloomy thoughts. Bogdanov, this one is really funny because I think later, like under Bogdanov, whatever his name is, like a little later in Imperial Material Criticism, Lenin's like, what? Only Allah can figure out what Bogdanov is writing, like to his word salad. Vladimir Ilyich was not familiar with his philosophical works at the time and did not know him personally. Plainly, he thought he was a man of caliber as far as the party was concerned. He was on a temporary visit and had extensive connections in Russia. Periods of distressing squabbles had come to an end. Hardest of all, it was for Vladimir Ilyich to break with Plekhanov. And with that, I feel I'm going to mark it. How do I mark it? Oh, I know. I'm going to take a picture and text it to Janet, so then I will know where we stopped next week. Where we can stop where we stopped. Like that was, I don't know why I didn't think of this like idea before. Instead of like trying to mark the book, I just take a picture. Now I text it to Janet, and then will remember where we stopped next week. Okay. Okay, so the page number was 104. Yeah, if somebody else could also remember, that would be great. 104. Yeah, so yeah, this is a very thick book. But it's really worth it. It's really good. Yeah. Okay. With that, I will say Slobodu Narodu Smrti Fascismu, and have a good night, everyone. And if you have any awkward uncles, like my dream, make it come true. Just like a guest who I could like read Lenin with, and suddenly become like that's my dream. So make it come true.